Yo, what's up, all my gamer friends? Over here on Deadline, we got an update on The Last of Us Season 2 episode count as revealed by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. And they explain their decision and tease potentially more seasons over here on Deadline. An exclusive. It's a case of good news, bad news for The Last of Us. We've been patiently waiting for more than a year for an episode of HBO's award-winning drama. When Season 2 finally arrives in 2025, it'll be shorter than Season 1, consisting of 7 episodes. 7? But the good news is that a potential third, there's definitely going to be a third. If they're saying potential and it's going to be significantly larger, there's already going to be a third for sure. Possibly bigger in scope, and there could very well be a Season 4 coming behind it, which I find that hard to believe how they can go past 3 seasons. But executive producers, showrunners, and directors Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann say that one of the season's episodes will be quite big in length. The size of the Season 2 order was hinted at in January when Deadline revealed the lineup of the season's 7 directors, including Mazin and Druckmann. The story material that we got from part 2 of the game is way more than the original material that was in the first game. So part of what we had to do from the first start was figure out how to tell the story across seasons, Mazin said. When you do that, you look for natural breakpoints. And as we laid it out, this season, they made a spelling error. It's kind of funny on Deadline. The national breakpoint, obviously supposed to be natural, felt like it came after 7 episodes. That means Mazin and Druckmann envisioned the series running for at least 3 seasons and possibly 4. I think going to 4 seasons is kind of milking it. You can do it all in 3. That's what I think. But according to what Mazin says, we don't think we're going to be able to tell the story within 2 seasons, because we're taking our time and going down interesting pathways, which we did a little bit in Season 1. We also felt like it was almost assuredly going to be a case that as long as people keep watching, we can keep making more television. Season 3 will be significantly larger. And indeed, the story may require Season 4. So even though there's natural breakpoints, they still somehow managed to get to 7. But at the same time, it's like, what if this season is like 7, and then next season is only like 9? And I'm like, well, you could have just done 8 and 8. But maybe next season will be 10 or 11. It's just a weird way to break it up. But this is what they're going with. 7 episodes is pretty dang short. Then have to wait another 2 years or so to find for Season 3. But later on in the interview, Mazin sounded more definitive. One thing is absolutely for sure. I don't see how we could tell the story that remains after Season 2 is complete in one more season. In that same interview, Mazin and Druckmann looked to dispel any fan concerns that they plan to tell the entire story of Part 2 of the game over Seasons 2, 7 episodes. Absolutely not. We just want to set people's minds at ease that the idea that this season coming up is a little bit shorter than the first one is not because we're taking less time to tell the stories, it's because we want to take more. The story we're telling is much bigger than the story of Season 1. There's just a lot more going on. It's a lot harder to produce, but we want every episode to feel like its own blockbuster. Mazin and Druckmann are keeping the themes of the PlayStation game's 2 existing parts, which have been described as Unconditional Love Part 1 and Revenge Part 2. More specifically, it's a continuation of love from the first season, and this is just the dark side of that coin. The pursuit of justice at any cost for the ones you love and the exploration of that. One thing Mazin and Druckmann will not do is go beyond the existing source material the way fellow HBO genre drama Game of Thrones carried on after covering the 5 published novels in George R.R. Martin's series. Martin has yet to finish planned 6th and 7th books. I'm pretty sure Martin is just chilling like a villain, smoking penicillin and drinking. There has been speculation about a third Last of Us games, though a new installment has not been picked up or put into development. As a fan, I'm thrilled that there might be a third Last of Us games. As a co-creator of the show, there's no world where I want our show to go beyond the source material that the people have in the world. Our show, as people know it on HBO, is going to cover the material from the second game, and then quite a bit of material that is relevant to the story, as I said, but wanders down interesting new paths, unseen stories that were told within the context of that game's material. Well, there's definitely some flashbacks in Game 2 between Joel and Ellie. They could definitely do an episode of at least. Though sometimes I hate flashback episodes and they feel like they're filler. And with 7 episodes, to waste an entire episode on a flashback would be so irritating. I mean, honestly, everyone loved the Nick Offerman episode in season 1. They could have removed that entire episode and no one would have cared, because no one would have known that it existed. Even though everyone loves it and thinks it's the best episode ever made, the show didn't need that episode at all. They could have taken it out and no one would have cared. That's an example of what they could do in season 2. Take a relationship, like they could take Ellie's and they could take Ellie and Dina's relationship and make a whole episode out of that, which I can see that happening, because that's going to be a big part of this season. Back to the article, Druckmann, who is head of Naughty Dog, the studio behind Last of Us, would not address the prospects of Part 3, something he hasn't discussed with Mazin either. Though it is interesting recently that Druckmann mentioned something about a whole new IP that Naughty Dog is doing, and it's supposed to be like the next level. But I feel like he was only saying that because of recently Hellblade 2 came out on Xbox, and it's literally the most incredible video game ever made, like visually. And it almost feels like he was just saying that to take some of the heat away from the Xbox, because how dare Xbox get any positive light shone on them at all ever? That's not allowed to happen. So someone has to dump on it immediately. Hashtag Xbox tax. Our focus is on the 2 games. As Craig mentioned, there's quite a bit of material that we're taking our time with, and we're looking into each piece individually to make sure it's got its own arc, its own journey, and the characters go on. But there is a grander plan that ties all the seasons together. Season 2 of the series will be revisiting events of Season 1. That's new information. Yeah, exactly. Like I just said, the Bill and Frank episode, they don't need to be in the show. They died, so who cares? The 2 stories are so interconnected that inevitably we're going to be touching on things from that first season of the first game, because there is a continuation of those characters. We do tricks sometimes. We do interesting things. The Bill and Frank story from Season 1 was inspired by the characters in the game, but it was a very different approach. There will be things that we do that are different, as in before, but we were very much focused on telling the story of the second game, which, as Neil says, is inextricably linked and intertwined with the events of Season 1. There's been a lot of curiosity among fans of the game whether the Season 2 arcs of some of the characters will be expanded. Of course, Mazin will not elaborate beyond reiterating that we will continue to do our things. Sometimes that means we do things just like the game, sometimes we do them differently. I think it'd be fair to say that since we are taking our time to dig into the story and expand certain areas, of course there are going to be some things that are going to be expanded. But which characters and how we'll keep that secret. A secret. So Mazin and Druckmann say they have mapped out the entire series. So not just this episode, this season, they have at least the next season mapped out. And potentially a season 4, but I think they should edit that down, whatever they've already got planned, to just 3 seasons. I feel like 3 seasons is all this series needs. Unless they make a 3rd game. But then it'll almost be like, well, they made a 3rd game, so now we gotta make a 4th season. Oh, they made a 5th game. They made a 4th game, so now we gotta make a 5th season. I don't know. Pretty much we had a pretty good concept of how that will work. I think what happens naturally when you begin to focus on a season and where the natural breakpoint should occur, then who knows? It's a good theory. Once we put it into practice, who knows? One thing is certain. I don't see a world where we go through and we go that's shorter than we thought. I don't see a world where we go through and we go that's shorter than we thought. That's a weird thing to say. Mazin said, I'm really bad at reading these things. We are committed to delivering great seasons and arcs, and HBO was amazing about this. They let us pick that natural spot. Instead of us having to figure out how to create seasons around an artificial number, we create the length of the seasons around the story and how we are telling it. Druckmann picked up on that, stressing how structure is incredibly important at all times. There's no reason for it to never not be the most important part of developing any show or movie or anything. It's the backbone of all of screenwriting. Our process was we sketched out multiple seasons and we did a deep dive on season 2. To echo what Craig is saying, there is no padding. Everything is in there is intentional. There's always a goal in mind that we're always heading towards. We are never meandering for the sake of meandering. It's always to say something greater for these characters and themes. As it says here, Season 1 was originally plotted for a 10-episode run, but instead was comprised of 9 episodes. with a supersized 90-minute opening installment. So they could do that again in this, like it'll be 7 episodes, but one episode could at least be 90 minutes, just like they did here, either the first episode or somewhere in the middle. And the Praise Bill and Frank episode clocked in an hour and 12. So season 1 really was a 10-episode length season in hours. So certainly in season 2, there's an episode that's going to be again closer to, I don't know if you would say feature length, but quite big. I like generally hitting about an hour. It's a great length. I love working in that format. What we don't want to do is say a season of 7 episodes where each episode is 90 minutes. Part of why we're doing 7 episodes is finding that nice line. Deadline spoke with Mason and Druckmann after when The Last of Us was 1 week into production in season 2. Since then, HBO has released 2 first images of the new season featuring Pascal and Ramsey. I love making this show. I just finished my first full week of directing on episode 1 of season 2. And I couldn't be happier or more excited. The scope of these things is at times absolutely massive, and season 3 promises to be just as big, if not bigger. Generally, most season 2s are always bigger than the first one. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more action type sequences. There's only like 1 or 2 episodes of season 1 where there was like a full-on lots of action. Not that I care about that. For the Emmy award-winning writer-producer behind HBO's Chernobyl, the joy is mixed with some anxiety, as The Last of Us has a high bar to clear after logging the most watched debut season of an HBO series ever. I didn't know that. Ever? Logging the most watched debut season. And winning 8 Emmy Awards, 2 SAGs, a BAFTA, and a DGA, WGA, AFI, and Peabody Awards. They won a bunch of awards. I told my wife, she's up visiting up here in BC, I guess. I said I'm actually happy, and she was like, what? I'm feeling happiness. It's very strange. I worry so much about making a great show. I think about the audience all the time. Season 2 of The Last of Us features Pascal and Ramsey and Gabriel Luna returning. Season 2 of The Last of Us features returning stars Pascal Ramsey, Gabriel Luna as Tommy, and Ratina Wesley as Maria, but joined by a bunch of new members, including Caitlin Diver as Abby, Isabella Merced as Dina, Young Mazzino as Jesse, Aurelia Barra as Mel, Tati Gabrielle as Nora, Spencer Lord as Owen, Danny Ramirez as Manny, Jeffrey Wright as Isaac, with Catherine O'Hara also guest starring, probably in like 1 or 2 episodes. Then she'll die. First week of shooting any new season of any show is inherently difficult because you're getting back to work. You got to shake up the rust a little bit, Mason said. You're working with new actors, playing new characters, we're discovering new things, and this week went about as well as I could have imagined. We did get to work with some of the new cast. They're outstanding, and the material that we shot and the new elements that we've included are terrific. I'm just incredibly optimistic about what we're doing here, and it's only just begun. I think we are set to deliver something special. Hopefully that's how it turns out. I'm hoping that that's how that turns out too, Mr. Mason. And I would love you to tell me what you hope it turns out. I'm sure season 2 is going to be just as great as season 1. We'll find out in another year, maybe even 6 months. Could come out first quarter 2025. Because I'm thinking that they're almost done shooting already. They finished in June 2022 last time, and the show debuted January 2023. But who knows? That's again me just hypothesizing. But if you have any hypotheses of your own, let me know below. But also don't forget to like and subscribe, and for the love of God, keep gaming.